The office was quiet. Screens glowed, printers hummed, chairs creaked. The air smelled faintly of paper and dust. Serena sat in her corner, eyes fixed on a set of lighting calculations. She liked the neatness, the way numbers obeyed. Her desk was her shield, the one place where silence felt almost safe. Then the door opened. A new rhythm entered the room. Steps that were lighter, uneven, yet certain in their direction. Serena lifted her gaze without meaning to. A young woman walked toward the large format printer. She carried a pile of drawings, clutched close, almost slipping from her grasp. The fabric of her pale dress brushed against the edge of the tray. Her hair, tied high, left a few strands loose, swaying as she moved. The printer clicked awake. Kira pressed one button, then another. The machine responded with a low whine. A sheet slid out, but the colors were wrong, lines smudged, shadows bleeding where clarity should be. She frowned, pressed again. Another sheet emerged, worse than before. Ink smeared along the margin. She muttered something under her breath, voice too soft for anyone else to hear. At the nearby tables, a few colleagues looked up, then looked away. No one offered help. The sound of typing grew louder, deliberate, as if to cover her small struggle. Serena watched. She could have turned back to her file. She could have told herself that mistakes were part of learning. But her eyes stayed. The young woman's hands moved quickly, almost desperate, not careless, only too eager. Another sheet bent at the corner, ruined. A tiny mark of black ink dotted her cheek where she had brushed too close to the cartridge. Serena stood. She did not plan the motion. Her chair rolled back with a muted scrape. She crossed the carpet, her steps soundless, her face unreadable. Kira startled when Serena reached the machine. Her eyes widened, then softened in relief. Serena nodded, a gesture that carried neither question nor explanation. She leaned closer, fingers swift, adjusting settings hidden behind 2 layers of menus. The printer's light blinked from red to green. Serena tugged the paper guide by a fraction. The next page emerged. Smooth. Crisp. Lines steady, colors balanced, legend clear. The kind of output that spoke of order rather than chaos. Serena took the page, checked it once, then placed it in front of Kira. Kira exhaled, shoulders dropping. Her mouth opened in a half laugh, half sigh. "Thank you," she said, her voice low but certain, carrying warmth that could not be feigned. Serena looked at her, just for a moment. Eyes bright, cheeks flushed, strands of hair falling loose against her temple. She looked alive, not defeated, not embarrassed, only grateful. "You would have fixed it," Serena said softly. Her tone was calm, even, but her chest felt unsteady. "Not this quickly," Kira replied, smiling. "I was about to give up." Serena adjusted the feeder one last time, then stepped back. She intended to leave, to retreat into the corner where she belonged. But Kira spoke again. "I'm Kira." She hugged the stack of papers closer, as if anchoring herself. "First week here." "Serena," came the quiet reply. Kira repeated the name under her breath, as if testing the shape of it. The syllables lingered. Her smile deepened, not wide, just real. The room around them kept moving. Phones rang. Keys clacked. Dahlia walked by in her tailored suit, the kind of presence that bent the air around her. She did not look their way, not yet. Kira tilted her head, eyes still on Serena. "You saved me," she said, half teasing, half sincere. "I owe you." Serena almost dismissed the words. But they landed somewhere deeper than they should have. "It's just a printer," Serena murmured. "Maybe for you," Kira said. "For me it was a disaster waiting to happen." Her laugh was nervous, but light. She glanced back at the perfect page, then at Serena again. Something unspoken passed between them. Not gratitude alone, not curiosity either, but recognition. The printer grew quiet. The last sheet slid out, flawless. Kira gathered the stack with care. She tapped it twice to align the edges. Serena noticed the precision, the way her fingers moved with respect, not haste this time. Do you take your coffee black? Kira asked suddenly. Serena blinked, caught off guard. Yes. Good, Kira said simply, as if she had solved a puzzle. She turned, ready to return to her desk, then looked back. Her smile was softer now, carrying something Serena could not name. Serena returned to her corner. She picked up her pen, but her mind was no longer fixed on calculations. Her chest carried a tremor, a warmth she had not invited. Across the aisle, Kira spread the drawings on her table. She bent over them, scribbling small notes, the loose strand of hair falling forward again. Serena let her gaze linger for a moment longer. Then she forced her eyes to the screen. But the numbers blurred, and in the quiet hum of the office, she could still hear the echo of Kira's voice. The morning continued. Work resumed. Yet for Serena, something had shifted. A small crack in the walls she had built. A light, faint but insistent, had found its way in. The following days unfolded with an energy that the office had not known before. Conversations at desks stretched longer, laughter broke out near the design tables, even the dull meetings seemed lighter. Kira moved through the space with an ease that ignored invisible walls. She leaned into discussions, pulled others into sketches, asked questions that sounded playful but cut straight to the point. Her presence spread like a current that no one could quite resist. Serena noticed. She tried not to, but her eyes found Kira often. At first, she told herself it was curiosity, then simple observation, then something harder to name. She watched the way Kira rested one hand on the edge of a table as she explained an idea, how her brow furrowed not from arrogance, but from focus, how she listened without pretending. Serena measured light all day, but she had not measured a person in this way for years. One afternoon, Kira appeared beside her desk. She set down a paper cup with a lid still warm. No words, just a small smile before she walked back to her station. Serena stared at the cup, black coffee, no sugar, no cream. She touched it with hesitation, then lifted it to her lips. It was the exact taste she preferred, bitter and steady. She looked up, but Kira was already busy over a plan with 2 interns. The simple offering sat in her hand like a quiet secret. The ritual continued. Each morning a cup appeared, always placed gently on the corner of Serena's desk. Sometimes Kira offered a quick glance, sometimes not. No one commented. The office had its rhythm, and this became part of it. For Serena, though, each cup felt like a note left on her pillow, brief but deliberate. Dahlia, however, noticed. She always noticed shifts in the room, especially those she could not control. She carried herself with the kind of grace that silenced chatter when she entered. Her heels marked the tempo of authority. Serena had endured her for years, kept interactions minimal, avoided conflict. But Kira did not shrink. She greeted Dahlia with the same smile she offered everyone, genuine, uncalculated. It unsettled the balance. The clash arrived on a rainy Wednesday. The team gathered near the break corner for a short pause. Kira had stepped aside with her sketchbook, balancing a pen between her fingers. Dahlia approached with a paper cup in hand. The move seemed casual. The liquid spilled forward, dark and sudden, staining the light fabric of Kira's skirt. Gasps broke the quiet. Kira froze, stunned, hands instinctively covering the mark that spread quickly across the cloth. "I am so sorry," Dahlia said, voice smooth, too smooth. She made no move to help. Her eyes, calm and sharp, lingered longer than apology allowed. The room shifted. People looked down at their screens, unwilling to step into the moment. The air grew heavy with avoidance. Serena stood. She did not rush, did not announce. She crossed the short distance and pulled a stack of napkins from the counter. She bent slightly, blotting the stain with precise pressure. Her hand brushed the damp fabric, firm yet gentle. Kira's breath caught, but she stayed still, eyes wide. "This is a workplace," Serena said, her tone flat, cool, carrying no decoration. "Act like it." Her words cut through the air. Dahlia's lips tightened. No one laughed, no one spoke. Serena placed the rest of the napkins in Kira's hand, then straightened, expression unreadable. She walked back to her desk without pause. The silence that followed was louder than any confrontation. Dahlia remained still, her smile thin, then turned away. The staff buried themselves in tasks, but the tension lingered like smoke. Kira looked at the napkins, then at Serena's back. Something had shifted, not just for her, but for everyone. A line had been drawn in plain view. The next morning Kira brought coffee again. She set it down with care, more deliberate than before. Their eyes met for a second. Serena gave the faintest nod. No one else spoke of the incident, but the memory pulsed beneath every interaction. From that point, Serena found herself pulled into Kira's orbit more often. Joint projects required shared tables. Kira's ideas came fast, full of color and shape, while Serena's mind searched for the logic of light and form. Together, their arguments grew sharper, but also more alive. Serena felt the weight of Kira's presence across blueprints, the brush of a sleeve when both leaned over a single detail, the sound of laughter breaking tension after hours of concentrated silence. She had forgotten what it meant to laugh without forcing it. She had forgotten the sensation of being watched not with judgment, but with interest. And yet Kira gave her that over and over until Serena no longer knew if she was protecting or being protected. Others noticed too. The whispers began, soft at first, then spreading. Coffee cups left on desks carried meanings. A single defense spoken in public grew into a rumor of loyalty. Serena ignored them, but she felt Dahlia's gaze sharpen. Power bent when challenged, and Dahlia did not forget. One evening, as people prepared to leave, Kira lingered by the window. The sky outside was bruised with fading clouds. Serena gathered her notes, ready to escape the noise of the day, when Kira spoke. "Do you always carry everything alone?" she asked softly, eyes still on the wet streets below. Serena paused. The question felt heavier than it should. She answered with silence, then with the faintest shrug. Kira turned, smiled gentle but edged with something deeper. "You don't have to." The words lodged in Serena's chest. She wanted to dismiss them, to lock them away. Yet the tone lingered, the way Kira's gaze did not push but waited. That night Serena lay awake longer than usual. Numbers and diagrams usually cleared her mind. They failed. Instead, she saw ink on a cheek, a skirt stained with coffee, a smile that refused to dim. She saw hands that carried prints carefully, a voice that offered warmth without demand. She felt the crack in her walls widen, just enough to let in air. The days that followed confirmed what she feared and craved. Each coffee on her desk was a sign. Each shared glance was a thread. Each moment of silence carried weight, no longer empty, but full of possibility. Serena tried to focus on plans and fixtures, but her mind returned to the quiet gravity of Kira's presence. And always, at the edge of the room, Dahlia watched. Her polished charm remained intact, but beneath it something colder stirred. She had seen what unfolded between Serena and Kira, and she measured it like a rival studying the board of a game she refused to lose. For Serena, though, the shift was undeniable. The careful life she had built, the silence she had lived in, was no longer untouched. A young woman with quick laughter and fearless eyes had stepped into it, and nothing could be put back as it was before. The annual celebration arrived on a Friday night. A rooftop bar had been rented, strings of bulbs stretched across the open air, music drifted over the city. The staff dressed better than usual, heels clicking on polished tile, ties loosened, voices louder than the office ever allowed. Serena hated these gatherings. She came because absence was noticed, because Dahlia expected her face in the crowd. She kept to the edges, nursing a glass of water. The city skyline spread behind her like a map she had no interest in reading. The air carried perfume, cologne, and the sweetness of too much champagne. Kira was the opposite. She entered with unstudied ease, her slate-colored dress simple yet alive when she moved, sleeves pushed up, hair falling looser than in the office. She laughed quickly, accepted every invitation to join a circle, told a story that made strangers lean closer. She shone in a way Serena could barely look at. From her quiet corner, Serena watched. She traced Kira's gestures, the rise of her hand when she punctuated a line, the tilt of her head when she listened. Something inside Serena ached, not jealousy, not exactly desire, but the sharp awareness of distance. She had built a life on the safety of distance. Tonight, it felt unbearable. The music swelled, someone shouted for karaoke. A microphone appeared, cheap and tinny, but the group cheered as if it were a stage. A few hesitant voices tried, laughter rolled. Then a challenge came, daring Kira to sing. She accepted without pause. She walked forward, cheeks already flushed from wine, her smile reckless. The song began, not upbeat but mournful, a melody that tugged low in the chest. Kira's voice carried more strength than anyone expected, not polished but raw, full of cracks that made the words heavier. She sang of longing, of losing place, of searching for someone to see her. The rooftop quieted, chatter dimmed. Her eyes moved over the crowd, sliding past faces until they caught on one. Serena. The gaze locked. Kira held it as if no one else existed. She sang not to the room but to her, every word laid bare, a confession wrapped in melody. Serena's throat tightened. The air grew too heavy. Applause rose when the song ended, but Serena barely heard it. She left. She slipped through the crowd, heart pounding, hands cold. The elevator button glowed beneath her finger. She needed air, darkness, anything but the searing weight of that song. A hand touched her arm. Kira stood there, eyes glassy but sharp, the smell of wine on her breath. "Don't leave," she said softly. "Not yet." Serena hesitated. The elevator opened, then closed again. She nodded once. They descended together. The lobby was silent after the chaos above. Kira leaned against the wall, the reckless energy drained, leaving something more fragile. "Could you give me a ride?" she asked, voice quieter now. "I don't want to go alone." Serena answered with action, guiding her toward the car. The city spread around them, neon signs and red lights reflecting off wet asphalt. The air smelled of rain that never fell. Inside the vehicle, silence ruled. Kira leaned against the window, head tilted, lashes low. She began to talk, words spilling slowly. She spoke of school, of mistakes, of dreams that turned to debt, of people who told her she was soft and unfit for hard work, of how she stopped apologizing for that softness. Her sentences drifted, half coherent, half confessional, but always honest. Serena kept her hands steady on the wheel, absorbing each word as if they were meant for her alone. The city thinned. Street lamps flickered past like scattered stars. Then the talking stopped. Kira shifted. She leaned closer, her head resting lightly on Serena's shoulder. Serena stiffened, not from discomfort, but from the shock of it. Warmth seeped through the fabric of her blouse. Moments stretched. The engine hummed. Then a hand moved, slow, unhurried, settling on Serena's thigh. A simple touch, gentle, but heavy with meaning. Serena's breath caught. Every muscle locked. She did not pull away. The traffic light glowed green. The car rolled forward, pulling them through streets that blurred into shadow. Serena's chest rose in shallow bursts. She had spent years avoiding contact, avoiding the risk of being seen. Yet now she sat in a cocoon of silence, a young woman pressed against her, a hand resting where no one had touched in so long. It was not a dramatic moment. It was quiet, fragile, terrifying. A flame catching where there had been only cold. Serena kept driving, afraid that any movement, any word, might shatter the spell. Kira did not lift her hand. She did not speak. Her breathing slowed, even, trusting. When they reached her building, the porch light cast a dim halo on the wet pavement. Kira lifted her head slowly, her hand slipping away at last. She looked at Serena, eyes heavy, expression unreadable but full of something unspoken. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she stepped out, walked toward the entrance, disappeared behind the door. Serena sat there, hands still on the wheel. The seat beside her carried warmth that lingered, a trace of presence that would not fade. She closed her eyes for a moment, then drove away, the city unfolding before her like a road she had never dared to take. That night, lying in her own bed, she did not find sleep quickly. She replayed the weight of Kira's head against her shoulder, the press of a hand that seemed to anchor her in a world she had almost abandoned. She thought of the song, of the gaze that refused to look anywhere else. By morning, she had convinced herself to bury it. She told herself it was only wine, only chance, only fatigue. But when she walked into the office and found a black coffee waiting on her desk, her resolve faltered. The cup was warm, the gesture clear. She lifted it slowly, tasted the bitterness, and felt the memory of the night before burn deeper, impossible to erase. Monday morning arrived with an unnatural stillness. The office looked the same, yet Serena sensed a shift beneath the surface. She walked through the glass doors, the familiar hum of machines and muted chatter around her. On her desk sat another coffee, dark steam curling, but the comfort it once carried now felt fragile. Her inbox blinked. A new message marked confidential waited at the top. She clicked. The words inside froze her hand. Allegations. Professional conduct. An inquiry by Human Resources. She was summoned immediately. Her pulse quickened. She read again. The complaint named her by title. It suggested favoritism toward a younger colleague. Attached was a photograph, blurred at the edges yet sharp enough to wound. In the frame, her car interior glowed under a street lamp. Kira's head leaned against her shoulder. A hand rested on her thigh. The image told a story it was never meant to tell. Serena closed her eyes. She knew the source. Dahlia's precision was unmistakable. She would not confront directly when a blade could cut more cleanly from the shadows. The meeting room felt cold. A pair of representatives waited, neutral faces, clipped voices. They asked when she had offered rides. Why? Whether she had provided opportunities to one employee that others had not received. Their tone never rose, yet each question landed like a stone. Serena answered plainly. She denied preference. She explained that leaving a party late, helping someone home, was a simple courtesy. But her explanations slid into the void, absorbed by their silence. The photo lay between them. None of her words could unmake it. When she returned to her desk, the room seemed narrower. Conversations hushed as she passed. Keys tapped with unusual force. Her screen glowed as if mocking her. She focused on the lines of a diagram, though her thoughts could not settle. Across the aisle, Kira appeared unsettled. She placed her bag down too quickly, fumbled with a pen, then stood as if to walk over. Instead, she sat again, her expression tight. Something weighed on her. That afternoon, while Serena fought through notes, Kira opened her own inbox. An offer waited. Not small, not tentative. A proposal from another firm, generous salary, clear advancement. It was a door wide open. It asked her to leave the city, start again in a place untouched by office politics. The timing felt unreal. She read through the details 3 times, each line glittering with promises she had once wanted. Yet her chest felt hollow. She looked at Serena's back, straight, rigid, carrying a burden Kira partly understood. The offer would free her. It would also sever something barely born. Dahlia walked past, a hint of satisfaction hidden beneath her polished smile. She did not need words. Her triumph lingered in the air. That evening the office emptied. Screens darkened, chairs tucked in. Serena stayed longer, unwilling to face her own thoughts at home. The echo of the meeting replayed, every pause heavier than the last. She gathered her papers slowly, each motion deliberate. In the quiet, Kira lingered too. She packed her bag, though her hands trembled. She glanced toward Serena's desk, then toward the door, then back again. She carried something folded, small enough to hide in her palm. After a long pause, she walked to Serena's car in the dim garage. She opened the passenger door, slid the note into the side compartment, and closed it gently. She stepped back, lips pressed tight, eyes damp with restraint. The night air was cool. She gripped her steering wheel harder than necessary as she drove away, telling herself it was the sensible choice, that safety mattered more than possibility. Yet her throat ached. Serena discovered the note days later. She had reached for spare change in the compartment. Her fingers brushed against paper, thin and worn. She unfolded it with care. In Kira's handwriting, hurried but unmistakable, a single line. The passenger seat, still warm. Her chest clenched. It was not a farewell, not exactly, but it carried absence like a wound. She pressed the paper flat with her thumb, staring at the curve of each letter until her vision blurred. The office felt emptier the next week. Kira's desk no longer carried sketches or cups. The laughter that once threaded through conversations was gone. Dahlia moved with renewed poise, her victory quiet yet sharp. Others noticed, though. They remembered Serena standing in the break corner, defending dignity with a single sentence. They remembered the spill of coffee and the silence that followed. Dahlia's charm no longer glittered so cleanly. It carried cracks, hairline fractures. But for Serena, none of that mattered. The investigation hung over her, shadowing each task, each step. The weight of absence was heavier. She returned each evening to her car, hand brushing the empty seat beside her. Habit, instinct, longing. The silence in the vehicle no longer soothed. It gnawed. She tried to convince herself to let it go, to retreat into the safety she had built for years. Yet the folded note lived in her pocket, carried everywhere, its words echoing whenever she reached for it. One night, exhaustion pressing down, she sat in the driver's seat long after the garage had emptied. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Her hand drifted to the note again, fingertips brushing the inked message. The passenger seat, still warm. She closed her eyes. For the first time in years, hope hurt more than despair. The week dragged on, each day heavier than the last. Serena moved through the office like a shadow. She answered questions, produced diagrams, signed off revisions, but every task felt drained of color. The inquiry remained unresolved, a weight that pressed against her chest. Colleagues avoided her eyes, not cruelly, only uncertain. The empty desk across the aisle glared like a missing tooth, impossible to ignore. She drove home each evening in silence. The seat beside her stayed untouched, though her hand drifted toward it without thought. Sometimes she even reached for the passenger door before catching herself. Memory filled the space where presence had been. The note traveled with her everywhere, folded so many times that the edges wore thin. One night, she finally gave in. She opened the compartment again, unfolded the slip of paper, and read the words. The passenger seat, still warm. She stared until the ink swam. Something inside her gave way. She could not return to the life she had before, not after this. The walls she had relied on had cracked too far. She started driving without aim. Streets blurred past, neon lights streaked the windshield, pedestrians moved like shadows at the edge of her vision. She circled neighborhoods she had never visited, alleys glowing under single lamps, wide avenues pulsing with traffic. Yet her mind pulled in one direction, toward the place where Kira had lived. The building appeared almost by accident. A block of dark windows, balconies empty, stairwells unlit. Serena slowed, heart thudding. She pulled into the lot, headlights cutting across empty spaces. The apartment looked abandoned, no sign of life behind the curtains. She gripped the wheel, throat tight. She had been too late. She almost turned the car around. Then she saw movement near the far corner. A figure stood under a street lamp, thin shoulders bent, a bag slung over one arm. The light spilled gold on familiar hair. Serena's breath caught. She blinked, afraid it was only imagination, but the outline did not vanish. It was real. Kira turned her head, sensing the car. Their eyes met across the distance. No surprise showed on her face, only relief, weary and deep. She had been waiting. Serena drove forward slowly, each second stretched. She stopped beside her. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Serena leaned across and pushed the passenger door open. The gesture was small, inevitable. Kira slid inside, quiet, no hesitation. She placed the bag at her feet, folded her hands, and looked straight ahead. The silence carried weight, not emptiness, but a fullness that pressed against the air. Serena started the engine. They pulled out of the lot, leaving the dim building behind. The road stretched ahead, dark and open. For several blocks neither said anything. Serena kept her eyes forward, fingers locked on the wheel. Her pulse hammered. Finally Kira spoke, voice low. "I didn't go." She let the words hang. Then she turned her head. "I thought I would. I thought it was safer. But I couldn't. Not yet." Serena breathed slowly. She wanted to answer, but words felt fragile. Instead, she nodded once. Kira reached out then, slow, deliberate. Her hand rested on Serena's, covering it where it gripped the gear stick. Her touch was warm, steady, firm. "This time I won't move," she whispered. Serena tightened her grip over Kira's hand. The city rolled past, lights blurring into streaks. The world outside seemed far away, almost unreal. Inside the car, only their breathing mattered, the faint hum of the engine, the touch of skin against skin. They drove without destination. Past cafes closing their doors, past groups spilling from late-night bars, past rivers where water reflected the glow of bridges. Serena felt the weight on her chest lift, not gone, but lighter, bearable. She pulled into a quiet overlook above the city. The skyline stretched, towers rising against the night. The wind brushed across the hood of the car. She turned off the engine. Silence settled, but it was different now, no longer sharp, but alive. Kira leaned back, head resting against the seat. Her profile caught the faint light, eyes tired but steady. "You stood up for me," she said softly. "No one else did." "I didn't forget." Serena shook her head. "It was the only thing I could do." "That's not true," Kira replied. "You could have stayed silent like the rest. But you didn't." She paused, searching Serena's face. "And that night in the car, you let me rest. You didn't push me away." Serena swallowed. She thought of the photograph, the accusations, the meeting that tore through her composure. She thought of the whispers in the office, of Dahlia's sharpened smile. None of it mattered in this moment. "I don't regret it," she said quietly. Kira's lips curved, a smile small but honest. She shifted closer, her shoulder brushing Serena's. "I almost left. I was ready to run. But then I thought of you here alone, carrying all of it. And I couldn't walk away." Serena turned toward her. Their faces were near, shadows blending. For a moment neither moved. The night wrapped around them, holding its breath. Kira lifted her hand, touched Serena's cheek lightly, as if afraid she might vanish. Serena closed her eyes, leaning into the warmth. The simple contact broke something open inside her, a flood she had held back for too long. When their lips finally met, it was not fierce, not rushed. It was gentle, careful, yet full of everything unspoken. A promise, fragile but real. Serena felt her chest loosen, the weight of years dissolving. They stayed like that, in the parked car above the city, until the world outside blurred into insignificance. The note in Serena's pocket pressed against her side, no longer a wound, but a reminder of how far they had come. When they pulled apart, Kira rested her forehead against Serena's. "Whatever comes," she whispered, "we'll face it." Serena nodded. Her hand still covered Kira's. She believed it. For the first time in years, she believed in something beyond survival. They drove again, not toward home, not toward escape, but simply forward. The city opened ahead, streets glistening under lamps, intersections waiting. Each turn carried uncertainty, yet also possibility. Serena felt the road under her tires, the steady pulse of the wheel, the warmth of Kira's hand still joined with hers. She thought of the walls she had built, the silence she had clung to, the long years of distance. She thought of how quickly it had cracked when someone had walked in carrying light of her own. The night stretched on endless, but not empty. For once, she welcomed it. The journey had begun, and she was no longer alone. Sometimes love does not arrive with fireworks or declarations shouted across a crowded street. Sometimes it enters like a whisper, like a single cup of coffee left on a desk, like a hand that lingers just long enough to remind you that you are not alone. Serena had lived in silence for years, convinced that distance was safer than connection. She hid behind diagrams, behind the comfort of rules and numbers, behind walls that she thought would keep her from harm. But walls also keep out warmth, and when Kira stepped into her life with her restless energy and her fearless eyes, the cracks began to spread. Kira was not perfect. She stumbled, she drank too quickly, she let her laughter carry too far. But she never pretended to be anything she wasn't. That honesty, unpolished and raw, became the one thing Serena could no longer turn away from. It drew her closer each day, until even the quiet of her car could not contain what grew between them. Of course, nothing in love is without obstacles. Power resented them, whispers judged them, and choices pulled them apart. For a time it seemed that fear had won, that Kira would leave for safety, and Serena would sink back into solitude. Yet the story refused to end there. Because even when the world tried to twist their moments into evidence, even when shadows circled, the truth remained. Serena had defended her, and Kira had chosen to stay. Their reunion under the pale glow of a street lamp was not grand, but it was real. No audience, no witnesses, only two women who had endured enough silence and enough distance. A door opened, a seat filled, a hand rested where it belonged, and suddenly the future no longer looked impossible. And that is what love often is. Not certainty, but courage. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep driving forward even when the road is dark. Serena and Kira's story reminds us that intimacy can be found in the smallest gestures, and that even the quietest hearts can ignite when someone finally chooses to see them. If you felt their journey, if you carried their silence and their flame with you tonight, remember this: love does not always arrive when we expect it. It slips into ordinary days, into offices, into cars, into the cracks of our carefully ordered lives. And when it does, we have a choice: to close the door and retreat, or to open it and let someone inside. Thank you for watching and for sharing this story with us. This is She and She, a channel where women's love is told with honesty, tenderness, and the courage it deserves. If you would like to hear more stories like Serena and Kira's, remember to like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter. Until then, keep listening to the quiet moments. They may be telling you that love is already closer than you think.